Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, welcome to the program.
Happy Monday, Dr. Paul. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and I've got rested yesterday and the day before, but we've been busy. How are you doing? Did you have a busy last couple days?
Well, we had a great weekend, didn't we? We had our supporters dinner on Friday. Then we got to sit around with Lou Rockwell and Jeff Dice, two of our favorite people at the Mises Institute, at their great conference on Saturday. That was packed, wasn't it?
House full. Huh?
It was a house full, and there were such wonderful people. I mean, they were such great people.
It was a crowd. Sometimes if you get a little boring, and sometimes I think, if I don't perk up, I'm going to sound boring. Nobody left.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So they stay there, but there's hardly ever you have a program like that. You don't have a few people have other things to do.
Yeah.
But no, the crowd stayed, and they were nice. And I think I heard somebody say something that I say frequently. They'll say, "Boy, we really like this and this." And the individual says, the crowd makes the speaker.
Yeah.
So we were well received, but they deserve the credit because they were responding to a message that we think is very important.
Yeah.
So it did turn out well.
It was great.
Maybe, it's a mixed bag. We get locked down and couldn't do this for a while, and it's perking up a little bit. But then on a few things we're reporting today, it looks like there's still some jerks out there that want to close us down again. But so far, it looks like if you want to avoid it, there's still a few spots in this country that you can come to. Texas being a little bit better than others, but Florida's better. But if you want to avoid it, it looks to me like they might avoid thinking that they can operate out of New York City, especially, or New York. And we want to start off with New York because there's a mayor up there that's a little bit nutty.
Yeah.
And he's determined, but when he makes his statement, he doesn't sound bombastic, and he sounds. Well, it sounds like he does have a little bit of a brain, but then when you listen to what he's saying, it's horrible. And we want to just follow up on this. The headline right here on Zero Hedge tells you a whole lot. New York will require full vaccination to access restaurants, gyms, and entertainment. 5-year-olds need at least one shot. And this isn't just a limited number of people, that have more than 100 employees. He says everybody.
Everybody.
But you can be sure though that politically speaking, there will be political groups. We don't have evidence of that, but there's evidence that floats around that the administration does it. They exempt certain people. You people don't have to bother about it. Sometimes it's the postal union and workers union, and all of a sudden they don't have to follow the same rules. Actually, it's discriminatory. They allow some people liberty, and the other ones they don't. So it's very nasty. But this is bad news, and he says it with enthusiasm, and there's just no evidence of a need for this. And so I think, politically and economically, this can't be good for that city.
Yeah.
I was being a little bit facetious, but it could be true. I said, they're just doing this is logical. They're doing this to destroy the city, drive down the real estate prices, and then a few people who were left over with some money, they're going to come up and buy the whole city. So, but that's a little bit too conspiratorial, so I just don't know if that's going to happen. But economically speaking, that could happen because every once in a while you do see people moving in where the property values have been knocked down, artificially knocked down because of COVID in the last 2 years.
The story of this whole virus scare over the last 2 years has been a massive transfer of wealth from the working and middle classes to the extremely rich. How many billionaires have done so well? So actually yesterday's conspiracy theory is tomorrow's news story. Because I wouldn't doubt that would happen at all. But yes, the first city in the country, New York City, to tell everyone, get your shot or go to the gulag is essentially what DeBlasio is saying. And this is his parting shot at the city that he must hate because he's single-handedly destroyed New York City with his insane mandates over the last year. And this last one, if I had a business, if anyone had a business, and I feel sorry for some of our friends that are in New York City, but they're going to leave. It's going to be over. Let's watch it let's look at from the mouth of the beast himself. Let's watch DeBlasio announce his wonderful new restrictions. It's a Twitter video clip. It's that first one there. just play the whole thing whenever you get it ready. We'll listen to him. We won't put words in his mouth, Dr. Paul. Let's listen to DeBlasio make his point. Here he is. Here, hi, Bill.
We have decided to use a preemptive strike to really do something bold to stop the further growth of COVID and the dangers it's causing to all of us. So as of today, we're going to announce a first-in-the-nation measure. Our health commissioner will announce a vaccine mandate for private sector employers across the board. All private sector employers in New York City will be covered by this vaccine mandate as of December 27th. We're going to have some other measures as well to
he says
really
it with
focus
such
on.
confidence.
Yes, that's confidence. This will do it.
We're first in the nation. What a declaration to be first in.
Yeah,
You know, if he sees it our way, he's the first one bragging about undermining the liberties of people doing something that's probably 99% unnecessary.
Yeah.
You know, and there's no great benefits from it. But he sure is confident, and it's amazing that so many people, you know, go along with it. But I understand that people, you know, upstate New York, there's a lot more conservative libertarians upstate. But even in New York City, can you believe that they're waking up and some of them are moving out? And why wouldn't this just encourage more immigration from that? They're going to leave. They're going to be sick and tired of this. So, but you know, one thing that you know, this is very inclusive, and they have to set a standard. And they do admit that the group that's been least obedient to the officials are the black people.
Yeah,
you know, because well, there's various reasons for that, and they've been talked about. So I was thinking, you know, if they're going to force, if a certain group of people do it for their own reasons, and they're forcing them into it, and it is detrimental, I would think that they have very little concern about that group of people. It looks almost to me like Black Lives Don't Matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're going to force this on there. Well, first, they're taking away their freedom of choice, and second, there's a lot more people now saying this is not without risk, you know, pushing these, especially in the kids. There's so much evidence that forcing these kids to have these vaccinations have no real benefit to the health of the people who take these vaccines.
Well, as you say, blacks are understandably wary about white liberals coming at them with medicine. You know, they've had a history, and you're right, they are the least vaccinated people in New York City. They will be the most affected by this because, you know, certainly many of the underclass will not have the mobility that the wealthy will have. People like DeBlasio, who's super wealthy, won't have a problem, but they will, of course, have a problem. Well, DeBlasio cites Omicron variant as one of the main reasons for this. We got to get ahead of this. We got to knock it down. Well, what is it about Omicron? Well, let's look at this first picture that we have, this first JPEG that we have up. And this is from Bloomberg. Early signs of Omicron is that it escapes the vaccines. Okay, so the vaccines don't work against it. But the good news is, at least to some extent, it's unlikely to cause more severe illness. So it's less threatening, it's less deadly, and the vax doesn't work. So Bill DeBlasio, how do you justify forcing people to take a vaccine that Bloomberg says, and many, many others, won't protect you against it, and even if you get it, you're not going to get very sick? Thank goodness, that's great, great news. So instead of recognizing science and reality, he's doubling down on tyranny.
You know, it's not like there haven't been other examples of the failure of the vaccination. They were talking now about Belgium. You know, a month or so ago, they decided really to hit hard. Sounds like New York's following the country of Belgium. But in Belgium, they vaccinated 87% of the people, and there was no benefit that they could find out.
Huge increases.
They increased in the problems they had in the amount of cases that they have. But it just seems like objective evidence is of no value to them making their policies. And it's sometimes difficult to try to figure out their motivation, but if it's chaos they're looking for, they're doing a pretty darn good job.
Well, they are trying to use the Omicron as a scariant to terrify people. But it's not working out as well, at least so far, knock on wood, because let's look at this next. This is from the Hindustan Times, but this is something that you see everywhere. I just happened to pull this one. Why Omicron infection possibly looks like common cold. Omicron looks more human, causing mild disease, as it might have picked up the genetic sequence from the other virus in an immunocompromised host body. It looks like the common cold because apparently it's picked up some aspects of it. And the next one here, Omicron is so bad that you have to have guidance from the newspaper to tell you how to tell the difference. And this is from the Daily Mirror, the UK paper, telling people in the UK, here's how to tell the difference between Omicron coronavirus variant, a cold, and the flu. It says, as the world gets ready for the spread of Omicron variant, doctors and epidemiologists are reporting that symptoms are appearing to be less severe than previous types of COVID. And it said, it can be difficult to tell the difference between this new scary virus and a cold and the flu.
You know, I can just imagine some people, you know, they have the sniffles, so they go get their test, and they say, oh, you have Omicron, you know, disease. And the guy says, well, thank goodness, I was afraid I had a cold. You know, this whole thing is so bad, and it's so disgusting that they can get away with this.
Yeah.
But it's still, again, the people are speaking out, the people are leaving, the people are rallying, people are getting fired, and the political process is working very slowly. But it's still, the people have to react. They have to decide that they're going to resist and not obey, you know, every mandate from every official, you know, from mayor on up to the president. If they're whole purpose is to take away your liberty, micromanage your life, take care of your medical care, and just consume you with government mandates. People have to say, enough is enough, we're sick and tired of it.
Yeah. Well, our second story is related, and I don't know if Bill DeBlasio, maybe he doesn't read much, maybe he doesn't get this, but put up this next clip, because here's a Norwegian cruise line. Their absolute requirements is that every crew, and I'll put it back to you, but let's put up this next clip really quick about it. Here's from CNN. All crew members and passengers are fully vaccinated, and all 10 cases first reported were asymptomatic, so they didn't even have any idea that they had it.
They had to go searching for those cases.
Yeah.
But they're going to get them early so that they don't get sick.
Yeah.
We'll give them a vaccine shot and see how that does.
Yeah.
And then you can start looking at the complaints about the reactions to the vaccine. But if you talk about that, then you're bad-mouthing vaccines. Well, you don't have to badmouth vaccines to point that out. You could just point it out that use a little bit of common sense and read a little bit and find out that you know, these vaccines might not be perfect.
Yeah.
You know, so if that's the case, people could make up their own mind. But unfortunately, too many have gone along, and it becomes ritualistic. I just can't see how DeBlasio gets away with this. You know. That at least before they said, I guess Biden said, well, we'll control just the people with employers with more than 100 employees. But this is for New York City. You know, I guess if you have 10 employees, they're going to be treated the same way. And but I would think that the restaurant owners and the people who own some small businesses are going to have a pretty rough time. You know, the way I see the big picture is there's enough of a job and enough of a threat for the recovery coming for the malinvestment and the deficits created in manipulation of the Federal Reserve, that on top of that we have these additional problems that we have, and we have it. But you know, right now, even as we speak, the people who have a lot of money, and I think they are represented by people who sort of got the money from the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Stock markets are zooming up again, and there's no problems. But eventually, though, I see this as a major bubble that has come from the Federal Reserve on top of this distortion and deceit that has gone on with this concern. There's more concern than is justified. It doesn't mean that we should ignore it. It just means the treatment and the understanding and the process has been a total failure by government.
Yeah.
And this is an indication that maybe individuals might do better. And how many times have we mentioned, and how many times can you read about individuals that have gone their own way and practiced medicine the way they're supposed to, and patients becoming informed and the results being fantastic?
Yeah.
You know, that to me, the evidence is out there, and you say, well, the internet, we look forward to that. Sometimes the internet will give us the, provide us our exposure so we can, get in the debate. But it turns out that somebody decided, well, maybe we better control some of the internet and the arguments on the internet. So I guess what we better do is create something that if they don't go the party line, we'll cancel them and take them off the internet. And somebody the other day was making the comment, can you imagine that they did this to a president?
Yeah.
Denied him access, to one of the social medias, even though the social media was an arm of the government.
Yeah. Well, what was most striking as we talked to a lot of people over this weekend of our activities, and I think you did too, but I spoke to several doctors who had been following different protocols, let's just say, with extraordinary success, really demonstrable, extraordinary success. But they're literally terrified of letting it get out that they're actually helping people. It's like you have to go underground and you have to knock on a door like a speakeasy to do it. And they're terrified, and we would never say who they were because it's dangerous for them to actually help people.
Well, once again, as we close out on the cruise ship, they were all vaccinated.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
I don't get it.
And they still had a problem.
Yeah.
That's we've heard that many times, and I think we'll hear more when they start truly comparing. How many people's lives were saved by the vaccination versus how many people struggle, with the absence of voluntary medication. And that's the story out there that I think is so important. And to me, that means that yes, there'll be a variety of things and difficult choices to make, but still I have a lot more trust in the voluntary market where people use their brains and they do not get herded into one treatment fits all, and that is going to be dictated. Well, but you say, what they say? Well, yeah, but we have somebody that's running this thing. He studied it for 30 years, and he is an expert, and we do what Dr. Fauci tells us to do.
That's right.
Well, that is not quite as strong an opinion. I think more people are waking up. Maybe he doesn't have all the answers.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't. Even the president said this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. There were no unvaccinated on that ship,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So, everything they say, we're not saying that it doesn't work, does work, whatever. We're just pointing out very strange anomalies for people to consider. Well, I guess we move over to Germany. Is that our next little thing?
Yes, in Germany, they had a study there, and looking at this, they found out that there were no deaths, and yet they had to demand that we have a lot more. And the British has an example of that too. That it's very positive without the vaccine, and yet the vaccinators still come along, and in Germany they keep doing it. But I think that's that is just so careless that they do this. And well, the German kids, they really want to get them. They want them vaccinated.
Yeah.
That to me is, all this stuff that we talk about and feel outraged about it. It's really the kids and this stuff that, well, we have to do it for the kids, and all of a sudden, and they even they preface the position they have that the kids have to get vaccinated. They say, well, really, the kids haven't suffered that much. And they don't try to say they've never gotten, that there's a lot of kids dying. What ends up, they have these huge studies, and none of the kids have died in some of the studies that they have made without the vaccine.
Yeah, and this is interesting. Alex Berenson brought it up. Let me put on that first clip. This is what Alex Berenson wrote about over the weekend. Huge new study shows 0 COVID deaths of healthy German kids over 4 or adolescents. So kids without serious comorbidities, there were 0 deaths over the first 15 months of the so-called pandemic. And here's the study itself. This isn't Berenson making it up. It's not Ron Paul making it up. Let's look at this next one. Here's the study. This is a preprint study. It's got the British Medical Journal. It's got Yale. It's got Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. They did a test to find out what is the risk of hospitalization, severe disease, and mortality due to COVID in Germany. And do this next one because here's the results of this very, very, very large study. While the overall hospitalization rate associated with COVID infection was 35.9 per 100,000, ICU admission rate was only 1.7 per 10,000, and case fatality rate was 0.09 per 10,000. And this is interesting. The lowest risk was observed in children aged 5 to 11 without comorbidities, and these are the people DeBlasio wants to shoot. In this group, ICU admission rate was 0.2 per 10,000. And listen to this, Dr. Paul. Case fatality could not be calculated due to an absence of cases. They couldn't figure out the fatality because nobody died. So here's the study. Do with it what you will. As you say, there was a similar study in the UK that came to the same conclusion. Thank God kids are not dying from this, so why are they trying to inject them with something that everyone says, sorry to interrupt you, but everyone says it's potentially, it has risks.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're saying that Berenson said. He said, the German data, again, raises the question of how health authorities can possibly justify encouraging children of teenagers to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
It's astounding. And he said, so and this is his advice, and it's not demagoguery. His simple advice is, so parents will have to decide what's best for their children if they have their freedom.
Yeah.
At least in those states that bar vaccine fanatics from trying to vaccinate teenagers without parental consent. That is such extreme attack on liberty. So even the science part, if you set that aside, you still have the freedom part. But they've taken the science part, distorted the science as a justification for taking away their liberties.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not that complicated. And I think what I like about that statement, parents will have to decide what's best, and that means that they might have to go to PTA meetings and a few other places to get their freedom back to decide what their children should have or not have.
And again, if you are a parent of a child with serious comorbidities, you also need to decide how you best can protect your child, because there is not zero risk, but thankfully there is lower risk than anyone else.
Well, we have one statistics here that tells you that the pharmaceutical companies are probably doing okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes, they pass these things out and distribute them around the world, and they do good for everybody. And sometimes they just get stuck someplace and they get misplaced. I imagine there's a lot of that. Production is good. The reimbursements is great for these companies. Their stock prices go up, and their executives make more money.
Yeah.
And understand, some of those companies 3 or 4 years ago weren't doing so good, so they needed a little bit of boost to their economy. But the U.S. administers 468 million doses of COVID vaccine. And it's reported, it's admitted, the CDC admits that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of shots.
Yeah.
It's amazing how efficient they are when they want to round the people up. It sounds like the IRS is running this thing or something. But that again is, just astounding. And if you think, well, every shot means that person is protected. The assumption was, even though it was a stretch of what it was like, when people got the polio shot, it was assumed that, for the most part, they do. It was not perfect, but the whole thing is, it was a lot different than this. You didn't have thousands and thousands of people getting these shots and then see no improvement in the statistics if they had not had any shots. So that is a shame. That's a lot of people getting shots. And what's the solution for what they see or admit they're difficult? Or it's coming. Yeah. So we have to protect. More shots. So people wake up.
Yeah. Well, that's 500 million COVID shots distributed to Americans, mostly in 2021, because it only came out at the end of 2020. 500 million shots out there. So 2021 should be far less deadly for COVID than 2020. But that's not the case. More people have died from COVID in 2021 when you had the vax than 2020 when we didn't have it. And I don't know the explanation for that. I have no idea. Then here's the second point about that. 500 million doses administered. There are some states that have a lot more uptake and some states have a lot less. Look at this next clip. This is from Newsweek magazine. COVID hospitalizations surge across U.S., even in the most vaccinated states. That's not supposed to happen, Dr. Paul. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, well, we'll figure it out. I have a strong suspicion of what's going on there. But you know, there's another article from Lou's site, unless you had another statement.
No,
on that.
no, I'm ready.
And this is again on the subject of what we're talking about, and the title is "Children Are the Fault Line in the COVID Vaccine Narrative That Exposes the Fraud." Those are strong words, but there is at least deceit and misinterpretation and falsehoods and who knows what every single person's motivations have been. But the whole thing here, this is by Vasco Kohlmeyer, and he's good on this, and he just says that the insanity of insisting and vaccinating these kids just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And he has some quotes there and statistics to show that and nobody's really challenging it. You know, even the CDC doesn't have any chart to show how much danger it is to the kids, and yet they're all arguing for the shots with the kids. And as time goes on, younger and younger. It used to be 5 years old, and sometimes they're talking now, give it to them before they're 1 year old, as soon as they're born, which I think is rather ridiculous. And yet there's still a lot of reporting done for the vaccine adverse reporting system, and a ton of people are being reported. It's so huge that I don't even want to look at it. I don't want to say, this many complications, because I know if there had been that many complications, more people would know about it and be concerned. But those numbers are huge, and but we're getting that. That's a CDC statistic that tells us that people have called in and said, this is a complication that we have, and then there are people that report deaths, and at the same time, it never changes policy. It just means they dig in their heels, and I guess they figure if we give more vaccines, we'll finally kill this virus, and we're going to get the credit. But obviously, that doesn't help at all.
It's not worked. And Kohlmeyer writes about the Open VAX, which is an organization that exists, and it happened. They started way before COVID. What they exist to do is to take the CDC's numbers and put them in a more digestible way, because if you've ever tried to read a CDC chart, it's not a lot of fun. And let's put up this chart, because this is mortality from vaccines over time. This is via Open VAX, which uses the CDC's own data, reports of death over time. You see it's about normal, 90, 93, 94, a little bit more, and then take a look at 20 to 21, and the massive increase. And that people will say, hey, this is self-reporting, this is not investigated, this is not confirmed, and we would agree, that's absolutely true. But if you see an anomaly like this, why on earth wouldn't you put the resources into saying, something is happening here, maybe they're writing fake reports, but we need to get to the bottom of it. Why is the administration, why are the so-called public health experts so uninterested in this data?
Yes, it doesn't happen, but all I can see that we might do is contribute to the debate and guide some people to looking at both sides of it. That to me is so disgusting. And the other thing, of course, is people decide on social and medical policy that with no respect or no concern at all about liberty, and then they end up with worse conditions. And sometimes the solution is getting rid of more freedom, more lockdowns and more controls and more vaccines, and forcing parents to do this. And yet the story of Florida and the other states that have done well, no, they don't get the attention. They get the critique. They're bad people. At the same time, they won't critique the governor of New York or the mayor of New York City.
Yeah. Well, if we're done, I'm just going to do a quick closing statement. Again, thanking all of our viewers. But I do want to say, I did say it was a limited offer. I'm going to bring up again Dr. Paul's new mini book, Making Sense of Current Political Indices, where he talks about COVID, wokeism, and the cultural Marxist threat. It is a limited time offer, and that offer will expire this Sunday at midnight. And one of the reasons for that is we want to do our best to make sure you get yours by Christmas. So we're going to have to cut it off Sunday at midnight. $50 donation to the Ron Paul Institute, tax deductible to the extent of the law, will get you a copy of this, and a $100 donation will get you a copy hand signed by Dr. Paul as our thank you for supporting the Ron Paul Institute. So please act now, as they say on TV, and get yours. You're going to enjoy reading it. You're going to enjoy maybe passing it around. And we thank you for supporting the Ron Paul Institute, which does indeed put on the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Keep us going. We stretch your dollar a lot, don't we, Dr.
Right.
Paul? So.
No, I want to thank our viewers, obviously, for all the support. And Daniel and I got a little bit of a spur of energy over the weekend because the combination of our group and the people who watch this program, as well as support the Mises Institute, I mean, it was just grand because there was so much excitement, and I've always argued the case that, nobody completely learned something brand new there, but I think it's the association with other people who are like-minded that the people feel good about it. And of course, I always, when I talk to the young people on college campuses, I always say, this is serious stuff, and we talk about serious problems, and yet I think people, when they talk about it, they can't get depressed. I've run into still a lot of people, some of our strongest supporters, get to the point where they get overwhelmed with this and depressed. But the problem is not complicated. The solution is not complicated. The message doesn't get out because that's complicated because there are restraints. But a good message telling the truth and something that will give answers to the current problems, that message will spread. You can't stop it. And I think we witness that when we have our group meetings and when we talk to people that the message is getting out there. I'm always very much impressed when people have decided on doing some project, whether it's a newsletter, a radio program, or whatever. And things that I had never heard of, didn't even know of the individuals, and there's a lot of people out there. So even everybody that listened to this program, if you talk to people, you don't know how far that message got spread. It's just automatic because you can't stop it. And right now, I think the message is being spread. And over the weekend, we did talk a bit about the remnant, and we were praising the remnant because we saw the crowd as part of the remnant. And I see the viewers and the people concerned and interested in what I'm doing as part of a remnant who wants to cling to the truth of the matter and what is really valuable and spread that message. I believe the remnant is growing, and we should do whatever we can to continue that growth. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.